My name is Daryl Owens. I've lived in Berkeley most all my life. So Berkeley is a pretty progressive city. Frankly, most people call it the most progressive city in the United States because it's the birthplace of the free speech movement. It is the birthplace of hippie culture, the organic movement. Berkeley's generally been a trailblazer when it comes to progressive reforms. But when you talk about issues like zoning, that's one of the instances where it was a trailblazer and something that was fairly bad. But the city has really only just recently come to a sort of open public reckoning about it.
Single-family zoning laws are exclusionary zoning policies that allow only one unit to be constructed per property, eliminating the ability to build duplexes, fourplexes, and apartments, known as multifamily housing. Historically, non-white populations are more likely to live in areas with a high percentage of multifamily zoning, meaning that concentrations of single-family zoning contribute to municipal segregation.
My name is Terry Toplin. I am a member of the Berkeley City Council representing District 2. Zoning reform can't make housing justice happen alone, but we have to sort of like acknowledge the history of racial exclusion in the zoning first.
Single-family zoning first started in Berkeley in 1916, after a Supreme Court case banned blatant racial exclusion. Duncan McDuffie, the well-known real estate developer, wanted to ensure that the Elmwood neighborhood would be kept segregated, and he developed it as the first single-family zone neighborhood. White homeowners were not allowed to sell or rent to families of color because it would make the properties less valuable. This segregation was openly advertised by developers, with old city advertisements boasting about the lack of Chinese, Japanese, Negroes, or Filipinos, in the same way that they boasted about technologically advanced underground power lines. The framework of these racist policies still stands at the entrance to the Claremont neighborhood.
It's the big red pillars that guard the Claremont neighborhood. They're not physical gates, they're just decorations. But the point of those big structures is to signal that you're in the white community, you're in the low zone community, you're in the high class community. I personally go, these are very pretty things. I'm not gonna say that they're not pretty, but they also signify that I'm not supposed to be in this neighborhood. I know no black people that live in this neighborhood, yet as soon as I cross the big pillars, there's a lot of black folks I know who live in my neighborhood. Even though we're pretty close to this area, it's because of the multifamily housing that makes all the difference.
Growing up in Berkeley, Terry lived through the impacts of Berkeley's zoning policies.
My husband and I, we used to live together in Southside Telegraph by UC Berkeley in a rent-controlled apartment. It was like a tiny room we were subletting, and we got evicted, and we actually ended up temporarily homeless. Experiencing firsthand housing precarity, being displaced from Berkeley, it made me really aware of the ways in which a lot of our community members are vulnerable. When people are facing displacement, or they're facing eviction, or they've been evicted, and you're trying to find a new place, it's all you can think about, when I lost my place, I could barely sleep. We were we were in trauma mode the whole time. And that takes a physical toll, it takes a psychological toll, when you don't know where you're gonna be sleeping, and it eats away at you also. It's like you're living in terror, pretty much.
This past year, Councilmember Toplin worked with Councilmember Lori Drosty, who represents the Elmwood neighborhood, to take the first steps to overturn single-family zoning policies.
My name is Lori Drosty. I'm the Vice Mayor of Berkeley. In 2019, I put forward a proposal to say, hey, this is a really important issue that we need to focus a little bit more about. Can we study this issue? We're like, oh my gosh, no, we can't study it. How dare you? This is mayhem. The first proposal was a resolution, and a resolution is kind of like a statement. So the first thing I did was take the temperature. Where are my colleagues? Where do you stand on exclusionary zoning? then the meaty part was around providing the actual zoning recommendations. And we were able to pass those zoning revision recommendations unanimously.
Obviously, the Bay Area has a pretty chronic and historic housing shortage that dates back at least 40 or 50 years. And it's time to sort of confront these skeletons in the closet. We always accept it as just, well, this is just the way it is, the whites live there, the rich live there, and the zoning is there. But now we're seeing a confrontation of this history that it's time to allow these districts to integrate and become more affordable. The way to do that is by eliminating, first and foremost, single-family zoning. Allowing homeowners to add a second home to their house or turn their mansion into a 4-unit apartment building, not demolishing it, but just subdividing it, is a way to sort of respect the wishes of those who want to keep a so-called neighborhood character, which unfortunately many times is a proxy for race, but also, more importantly, add housing, which in turn drops rents and gives people affordable options.
These outdated zoning policies plague our communities, not just in Berkeley and not just in the Bay Area, but around the country. While some may claim that ending single-family zoning is not the best solution to our housing crisis, it does not matter. The policies are racist and they reflect a racist history of zoning in our country. When implemented, these policy changes become a form of restorative or even transformative justice.